Today's episode includes discussion of child sexual abuse. From Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford, this is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolfe. Some topics are so taboo that they remain in the shadows. Incest is one of those topics. There are no comprehensive studies or current statistics that can tell us how many people are affected by incest. Sexual abuse in families often goes unreported, and survivors of incest may experience shame, fear of not being believed, or pressure to protect the family's reputation. And children born out of incest, well, they might not even know. And if they do find out, they have a lot to process. Today, two people who were born as a result of incest share their stories. You'll hear from Jerri Harrell, who learned as a teenager that the person she thought was her sister was actually her mother, who had endured years of abuse at the hands of her stepfather. But first, meet Steve Edsel. He grew up knowing he was adopted, but his origins were mostly a mystery. His adoptive parents did tell him that his birth mother was just 14 years old when she gave birth to him, and that she and her parents used fake names at the hospital. They left shortly after he was born. Steve's only clues about his parents' origins were kept in a scrapbook his adoptive parents had put together, filled with newspaper articles about his birth, with headlines like "Mother Deserts Son, Flees from Hospital." The scrapbook also had a composite sketch of her and a brief description: round glasses, sideswept bangs, listed as 5'6" with reddish-brown hair. And that was all he had to go on.
It was really just kind of mostly in the back of my mind up until about when I was 14, which is the same age that she was when I was born. I have no clue what she could have went through at 14 years old. It's not that I had any anger or resentment towards her before that. It was just in the back of my mind. But from the time I was 14 and it hit me then, it's like it started a love for her that I didn't even recognize.
In 2000, at the age of 27, Steve began his search for his birth mother in earnest. He started by visiting the hospital where he was born, hoping to uncover some clues in his birth records. And
there was a photocopy of my mom's fingerprints. I'm like, that's my mom's fingerprint. She's real. You know, it's like I didn't just come out from underneath a cabbage leaf. That there's somebody really there on the other side that proves that I'm here and where I came from. And I mean, I just sat down and I just bawling like a baby. I was just crying. I didn't expect to see all that at that point.
Steve's quest to find his birth mother eventually caught the attention of a local newspaper, but its coverage led nowhere. Life moved on. He got married to his wife, Michelle, and his search continued in online groups for adoptees looking for their birth parents. And that's when he connected with CeCe Moore. She's a renowned DNA expert from the PBS documentary series Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr. Intrigued by his story, CeCe took on Steve's case pro bono. And then one Saturday evening, CeCe called Steve. She had run his DNA through a genealogy database called GEDmatch, and now she had something to tell him.
Your parents are related. It's either your mom's brother or your mom's dad, who was your father. I told her I understood, and I just went home, and I went home to Michelle, and I just sat in the chair and just cried. I was brokenhearted for my mom. Like, I had always in the back of my mind that I had thought, well, she was just a teenager, her first boyfriend, just, things went too far, and that's what happened. That's what I always put up in the front of my mind to think about. I didn't want to think about the worst things that could be happening. But it broke my heart. And it also made me love my mom more. That during those 9 months, that whatever she went through, she took care of me. And I had written out this whole letter. I was like, I want my mom to know, since we knew who she was, we knew where she lived, all these things. I was like, I wrote her a letter telling her who I was. I did not tell her anything about the incest and the abuse that had happened. I didn't want her to know, honestly, that I knew about that at that time. And I had mailed her a letter, and I had it certified where she would have to sign for it. And it was just maybe a week or so later, I get a little green card in the mail, and it has my mom's signature on it. And holding that piece of paper. So my mom's fingertips were holding the same piece of paper just a few days ago. That's one of the most precious things that I have. And I carry it in my Bible. It's with me everywhere I go. It's always there. And I never did hear anything. No response. And I was hoping that she would respond, but she didn't. And I never had any hard feelings about that. Never have I had anything that's happened. But during that time, my mind would make up scenarios of what had happened. And it nearly drove me crazy. It's always in my mind. I wake up with it and sleep with it and go to work with it. And my grandfather at that time, if he would have been my father, he was dead. And I remember going to his grave, and I stood over him and I said, I have you now, old man. I've got you. You thought you got away from me, and you thought you had it hidden, but I'm here now. I was so angry. I went through several months to where I'm glad that he had passed away, because I don't know what I would have done. God gave me a dead man to hate because he was not who my father was.
Steve wanted to learn more, so he tracked down his mother on Facebook and discovered that she was a prominent figure in a major sporting event, one we're keeping vague to protect her identity. As fate would have it, that very event was happening not far from where Steve and his wife Michelle lived. His curiosity got the better of him, so they decided to buy weekend passes.
And, it was thousands of people there. So it was like, okay, where in the world are we going to go? This is literally a needle in a haystack. We would split up at times, and I would go one way, she'd go another, and we would take photos. Like, do you think this could be her? And we would send it back and forth to each other. Like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. And we did this till lunch. So we go eat lunch, and we're out there on the grass, like in a park area, and we're just sitting underneath the tree, and just I'm thinking, did I mess up? Did God allow me to come here, or did I force the issue that I wasn't meant to be here? And everything's over for the day, and we're just walking around kind of frantically a little bit, just like, is she even here? And am I going to recognize her if she is? And Michelle asked me, do you want to stay, or are you ready to leave? What do you want to do? I told her no. I said, I'm going to stay here. If I'm the last person here, then I'll know. And it probably wasn't 5 minutes. Literally 10 or 15 feet in front of me, my mom walked straight in front of me. And I recognized her. I knew in my heart this was her. There was no doubt. My knees buckled, and Michelle had a hold of my arm. She's picking me up. It's like, come on, we got to go. And we've taken pictures. We're behind her, and we were taking pictures of her, and we're just walking behind her. And at that time, it was her boyfriend, but the man that she's now married to, they were walking together, and there was a little parking lot area for the people that were staying there. They had that little golf carts, and they got on their golf cart, and they drove right by me, maybe 5 feet from me. As we were leaving, we get in the car, and we go back, and it was on the radio, all the events and stuff that happened that day. And I think they had estimated, 33,000 people at that event that day. And I said, okay, this is a God thing. I said, I can't, it might have been me, I thought, but I said, not now. I was like, okay, so that was on a Thursday. On Friday, we get up there. We were there 7 o'clock in the morning, right when they open up. We're some of the first people there. And we're there maybe 5 minutes. And then lo and behold, coming down the road on her golf cart was my mom. Nobody else but me and Michelle and my mom. And she gets out, and she has a little dog with her, and she's just walking the dog in the area where we're at. And Michelle was like, are you going to talk to her? Because I could. There was literally nobody there. And at that point, I said, I can't do it. I don't know what it would do to her today with her being at her work and me showing up and laying this on her. I said, I can't do it. I'm not going to do this to her in this way. And at that point, I said, I'm ready to go home. So I go back home, and I wrote her another letter. And in that letter, you had to wear your ticket where people could see it when you walk in and out of the gate. I sent her that ticket. And I wrote in my letter that I was there. And I was there to see you. And I told her, I know now that I would never want to hurt you. I don't want to ever make you feel uncomfortable. And I'm always here when you want to reach out to me.
If you did hear back from your mom, what would you like to hear?
I don't know if she has any kind of love for me. I mean, that would be great to be able to hear that, I've always loved you. I'd like to hear, I guess, her tell me that I forgive you for what happened to me. Because part of me feels like I ruined her childhood, that she was never the same because of me. I mean, of course, everybody would love to hear their mom tell you I love you, and she could tell me she's sorry, but for me, she didn't have anything to be sorry for. I never was angry with her for what happened. She didn't have any control over any of that. The worst anger that I had towards anything was towards my birth father, my uncle. But even then, I had started to pray for him. I pray that God would take the anger away from me that I had towards him. Whenever he wrote his book and I read it, he is a complete and total opposite of who I am. But I sent him a message on Ancestry. I said, I know the type of man that you are, and I want you to know what God has done for me and what he's done in my life in spite of what you've done. And I told him that in that message that what you don't know is that God probably kept you alive by keeping you a secret from me for the last year and a half. Because I really think I would have done something terrible. I wanted to make him pay for everything that I've went through for the last 40 years and whatever he put my mom through. I told him, it's like, what you don't know now is I pray for you. And it said, it shows that he read the message. He never replied. He has 2 sons, so they'll be my half brothers. It's kind of funny. One is a musician, and of course they're both a lot younger than I am. But I've been to see my half brother, who's a musician, been to his concerts. The first time I ever saw him, we're in the vestibule out front, and they're out there, and I said, my wife goes to him and says, my husband's one of your biggest fans, and can I get a picture? And so I have a picture with my arm around my brother, and he has no clue who I am in the world.
What if he took an ancestry test and found you?
My results are public, so if he did that, it would show up. He would know.
You're listening to my conversation with Steve Edsel. He's telling the story behind his discovery that his father was his mother's brother. When we get back, what drives Steve to be so open about the facts around his birth?
Because maybe there's somebody out there that they need to hear that they are worthy, and it's not their fault, and it's not their mom's fault. There's healing beyond the pain.
Then hear how Jerri Harrell found out about the truth of her origins. I'm Chion Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay with me. Today's episode includes discussion of child sexual abuse. This is Audacious. I'm Chion Wolf. Today we're hearing from people who discovered that they were born of incest. In a little bit, you'll meet a woman who learned that the person she thought was her sister was actually her mother, and the man she believed to be her step-grandfather was in fact her father. She'll share how she found acceptance and healing after years of grappling with this painful truth. But let's get back to my conversation with Steve Edsel. Steve grew up knowing he was adopted, but he never stopped wondering about his birth parents. His search took a turn when he connected with CeCe Moore, the renowned DNA expert from the PBS series Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr. CeCe helped Steve find his birth mother, but the discovery came with a devastating revelation. His biological father was actually his mother's older brother. Steve's wife, Michelle, joins our conversation. She talks about the work she does with CeCe Moore to help people like Steve. Since Steve mentioned his relationship with God throughout our conversation, I wanted to explore how it shaped his search for the truth. I know everybody has, if they have a personal relationship with God, it's personal. You know, we have so many ways that we form our idea of what God is and isn't in our lives. And sometimes people feel as though God orchestrates everything and every single minutia that happens in your life is divine will, not yours. And some people are a bit more open about it. Like, yeah, this is down here, we're just doing our best. And God up there is maybe now and then nudging things, or the angels are helping things happen. I don't know. But when you talk to God about what your life has been like, what do you feel back from God?
In the very beginning, whenever I was like, I want to do this search, and I prayed about it for several weeks. God, if this is the road I'm to go down, I want you to be in control and open these doors where you want them to be open. And if it's not, you close the door, because I'm not smart enough to know which route I should be going. And when I got the results of the incest and the parents related and all that stuff, I mean, the very first I was like, why? Why did you let me go through all of this just to find this out? This isn't just a normal why. I mean, I've got to have some kind of an answer as to the why you allowed this to happen. I had read in the book of Job where he wished that he had never been born. And I was there. I would rather have not been born than for my mom to have gone through what she went through. If I could go back and be unborn and things not happen between her and her brother, I would give my life up for that. And I still would. But I prayed about that, and I was angry with God. But it's like, I can pray for my mom, pray for my grandmother, pray for my evil, wicked father. Now, I still don't have the answers to the why it ever happened, but I do know the why I am here today. My mom had a son that can tell her right now that he loves her. My grandmother has her first grandson that can look at her. In spite of everything that they did, I can look at her and tell her that I love her. I can look at my father and say, in spite of everything that you've done, in spite of who you are, I can still love you. And that's not a me thing. That's only a God thing that's happened, because I don't have it in me to be that way. I could not tell you how much I had to get in the Bible and study and pray every day to keep myself sane.
I'd love to hear about what went into the decision to come out about this.
I didn't want there to be another me out there that maybe they didn't have God, and they didn't have somebody, and they didn't have a good wife or a good husband to stand by them. Or if they're out there alone and they're going through the things that I have went through, I've been to the lowest. I can't get any lower. I can't get any farther down. I only have one place to go, and that's up from there. I don't mind telling it, because maybe there's somebody out there that they need to hear that they are worthy, and it's not their fault, and it's not their mom's fault. And there's healing beyond the pain. And there are still so many people that they may go through what I've went through, and they're angry. And it took weeks, months for me to get to the point to where I'm at now. I've had people say, do you wish you hadn't searched? I was like, never. Not one time have I regretted, because if I hadn't searched, I would have never seen my mom, would have never found my mom. And knowing her, it was worth it all. Seeing her face that day, it was worth it all. I wouldn't change a thing.
If you were able to somehow talk to yourself as a little kid, what would you want him to know?
There's some rough times coming, but don't give up, because there's going to be better days coming too. I mean, to think to go through 40 years of my life with my mom being an abstract and a ghost. I was always thinking too that, what if she had died during those 40 years? Something had happened. She was sick in an accident, something like, but God preserved her for me as well, for me to see her. And I would tell myself, it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it in the end.
Your wife, Michelle, sounds pretty amazing. And
Yes.
I'd love to hear, I mean, for a lot of reasons. First of all, she has fine taste in husbands. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
And you don't have to join this conversation if you don't want to. I know we didn't plan on it, but would you be interested in talking for a couple minutes about
Sure.
how this feels for you? Okay. So maybe a more specific question is, what is it about Steve that you love so much that being by his side seems like a natural thing to do?
The top of my list is his heart and his love for others, his love for the Lord. He's just good.
How have you seen him change over these years with all this new information? I imagine he's still the same Steve, but he's also processed quite a bit. What kind of changes have you seen, if any?
Well, he's always been kind and, somewhat tenderhearted, but after the search, he turned pretty much sappy. He cries at the top of, just at the drop of a hat. He cries at movies. He cries at puppies and babies, and he's just very soft and tenderhearted. Extremely now. He is empathetic for others. I mean, he can feel other people's pain sometimes. I think I've never seen anything quite like it with him, but he's a good old soul.
What has all this been like for you? I mean, I get the sense that you are his rock, and you literally held him as he fell when he first saw his birth mom. And how has this all been for you?
I would say the word to describe that is heavy. And I wish I could take some of it from him. And what I deal with now with volunteering for CeCe, speaking to other people, and I'm the one that delivers this news now to people. And I've done that well over 100 times.
How do you tell people this news?
First, I don't necessarily like the word incest. And usually makes people feel dirty whenever they use that term. I use closely related parentage. It just sounds better. So I changed my wording a little bit. I'm very direct. I try to just keep it short, and I try to keep it factual, and then I just pause. And it depends on how they react as to how I react. But there is not one phone call that I make that I don't get emotional. I always make sure they have somebody there, because I wish I had have been there when CeCe told him. And I try to just let them know that they're not alone, that our support group has over 135 people now, and they can join secretly. It doesn't show up under their groups, and nobody knows they're in there. It's kind of grandfathered into the secret part. But it's kind of like ripping off a Band-Aid. It's not really something you can, I don't know if hem-haw around is the right word, but you just kind of have to say it. You just have to say it. And then pause.
What have been some of the more common reactions?
Sadness or brokenheartedness. That's what I get a lot. Most of the time they immediately start crying or they get upset. I have seen anger. I've seen disbelief. I've heard extreme anger, gotten hung up on. That doesn't happen as often, but basically it's people, it just sad. They just get sad.
How do you take care of yourselves?
We do a lot of church activities.
Yeah, we're very involved in church, but we do some downtime. We do. We take social media breaks. We take those. Yeah, we'll go off grid sometimes and just kind of reset, because that's good. That's healthy to do that. We have a pretty strong marriage, so and we actually like each other, and we like to hang out with each other. So going somewhere without any phones and TV and stuff is perfectly okay with us.
Well, we have covered so much ground. I'm so appreciative of your time. Is there anything that I missed or anything you want to leave our listeners with? Open floor.
I want to give one plug real quick, if I can, to CeCe Moore and DNA Detectives. If there's any adoptees out there that are searching for birth family, go to the DNA Detectives. That's on Facebook and the website. Yeah, we would love to help you.
And it's free.
All volunteer. Keep seeking till you find the truth, because the truth is where it's at.
Well, Steve and Michelle Edsel, thank you so much for talking with me.
You have been the best person I have been on an interview with.
That is exactly what I was getting ready to say. You have been so kind. You're not just asking questions. You're here, and we appreciate that. We see your heart.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we done this interview.
Yes, it was a blessing.
Thank you.
If you was here, I would hug you right now.
Yes, we would hug you.
I would hug you so hard right now. That means everything to me. Thank you. Thank you for being open with me. Thank you for trusting us. You've been talking with Jessica Severin DeMartinez, producer for this episode, and she's poured her whole heart into researching your story and learning about you and lining me up with all sorts of information to know you better before connecting. And so it's truly a group effort. And I'm just so grateful, Steve and Michelle, for your time and for your heart and for your story. And I look forward to more people hearing it. I look forward to more people connecting to your resources, because as we know, with these DNA tests becoming more and more available, there will be more and more people finding this information out. And to have resources can change a whole life. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Yes,
it was an honor for me.
Yes.
I mean it from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
After the break, Jerri Harrell found out at 15 that the person she thought was her sister is her biological mother.
I just came out with it one day. I said, I know what happened, how I was born. And I wasn't quite sure, but I said it just to see if that was the truth.
I'm Kyone Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay tuned. Today's episode includes discussion of child sexual abuse. This is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolf. Jerri Harrell spent much of her childhood feeling like an outsider in her own family. For years, she felt like she didn't belong and that she was unwanted, and she never really understood why, until her teenage years. That was when she was forced to confront a history that had been deliberately kept from her. Born in 1963, Jerri came into the world as the child of a 15-year-old girl. That girl had endured years of abuse at the hands of her stepfather, starting when she was just 9 years old. Now Jerri shares how she discovered the truth. The person she believed was her older sister was actually her mother.
I started observing my sister interacting with my father. And then when you get older, you start noticing things that aren't quite what a sister and father would do. And by the time I was 15, she wanted to be a little more motherly towards me. And, your hormones are starting to work at that time. And we would have little arguments, and I didn't like her being kind of questioning me. So I just came out with it one day and I said, I know what happened, how I was born. And I wasn't quite sure, but I said it just to see if that was the truth, just to get a reaction. And it was. And then she came out and admitted it. So that's how I found out.
Since you were sort of bluffing.
Yeah, I was bluffing just to find out the truth. Yeah.
What happened next in you? How did you begin to make some sort of sense out of this?
Well, at 15, it was all confusing for me. I was angry, I was confused, and I just wanted to get away from the house. And I did. I ran away from home for maybe a week or so. And I had some traumatic things happen to me when I ran away from home. Came back home, and it was kind of like, okay, the truth is out. It's all out in the open now. Let it go. It's done. Move on with your life. And that's what I attempted to do the best I could.
Did you choose to share this with anybody at the time?
No. Oh gosh, no. Oh gosh, no. I carried so much shame from it. I could not, no, there's no way I could tell anyone. No, no. I just didn't know how to deal with it. And it affected me in everything in life more than I realized. Because a lot of times you think that something that affects you so traumatically, if you put it out of your mind, it's gone. But it crops up in every aspect of your life. And you don't even realize it in your decisions, in what you create, and how you live your life, in everything. So that's, pretty much what was happening. And overall, I had a decent life considering. I mean, I went to school, I became a nurse. On the outside, it looked like, oh, she's doing pretty well. I was functioning on the outside, but inside I was dying.
Did your sister or father behave differently to you once you knew? How did that relationship change, if it did?
My father, he was 69 years old when I was born. So by the time I found out, he was almost 80. So his health was getting really bad, and he didn't really have much to say about it other than it happened. I mean, it was not, I'm sorry. It was just kind of, okay, now you have to go back to school and finish high school. Yeah, it wasn't discussed. Nobody wanted to talk about it. It was just keep going. And I didn't know, a 15-year-old doesn't even know what the healthy way to deal with that is. I don't know how you actually deal with that. All right, let me go back to school now and finish, graduate or whatever. And the interesting thing was, during that time, prior to that, like I was doing really well in school. I was always on the honor roll and getting ready to get a scholarship to college. And it's like after that, it was like I barely graduated from high school after that. It was everything just shifted. So that was the beginning.
How do you talk about the next era of your life after this?
Now I'm going to make a life of my own, the way I want it to look, but still carrying all this baggage. So, now I'm going to have a career and get married and have a family and have 2.5 kids and live in a house with a white picket fence. And I did some of those things. I was married and I have 2 children, and they're adults now. And things really shifted for me when in 2009, 2010, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it really took me for a loop because I didn't expect that. I had 4 like major surgeries, and I got very depressed. I started abusing substances, and I was not in control of my life, and I was frustrated. It was to the point where, I overdosed. by 2015, I had gotten into recovery and my life changed. That's when the work started because I had so many resentments. I'd never gotten over what happened. I carried all that shame and guilt. I still, I wanted to blame the family. So it wasn't until then that I had to really take a look at myself. And I felt like the universe got my attention at that time to say, that's enough. It was like almost like I was at a crossroads. I could say, okay, I'm done with this life. I can't take this anymore. Or I could say the healing begins here. And that's what happened. I chose to stay. And I was angry that I had cancer. I was angry. I'm like, I came here, went through all this, and now I'm going to die. What? I was angry. And so I was like, no, I'm not going out like this. Still has not been easy, but oh my gosh, the healing that has happened since, the transformation of how I see life and what happened and why it had to happen. I was such a victim of my childhood and I wanted to blame everyone, but it's just I am just so blessed to be able to see it in a different light now. All of that had to happen for a reason. I'm here speaking to you for a reason. This is to help other people. This is not about sensationalizing, the way I came in or incest or any of that kind of stuff. This is about knowing you don't have to live in shame and guilt. You can be empowered. Everybody has a reason for being here. Everybody is a child of God. Everybody has a purpose in this life to speak their truth, to be their true, authentic selves. I couldn't do that before. I didn't know who I was. I was here pleasing everybody else except myself, except doing what I was supposed to do. And it's like, I am so free now to say and be and do what I want and what I know I'm here to do. And I don't care what other people think. I don't care. Some people are saying, oh, why would she tell all that information? It's because other people need to hear it so it can give them the strength to get through what they're going through. That's why I feel this is my truth, because being spiritual, I chose my parents. I chose my family. I went through what I went through for a reason. I did, to get through the other side of it, to forgive.
How do you define forgiveness?
Forgiveness for me, yes, I forgive other people, but it's really for my own soul growth, so I can move forward and grow spiritually, so I don't hold on to the attachment of anger and injustice or giving away my power. Because when you do that, you're not empowered. You're not holding on to your own power. You're giving it away to someone else. I've done that my whole life, just trying to please everyone else. And yes, it's like now I finally learned to have healthy boundaries. That's something else I never knew. I never knew what boundaries were at all. What is a boundary? What is that?
I know, new word for many of us.
A boundary? No, but it's like you have to take care of yourself. I have to keep peace. And, I'm still on that journey. I haven't gotten it all together yet, but it's just such a difference,
When I think about forgiveness, and we did a whole episode of our show about forgiveness, we had like 20 people talking about how they define it, and no one could agree on how to define it, but we could all agree that it was the search for relief and release.
Yes.
And when you release something, you can't release something if you don't accept it. And so I wonder, looking back, especially when you were 15 and the truth was revealed, can you talk about the process of accepting what happened? I imagine it didn't happen that day, but what was it like to accept what happened?
At that time, I never accepted it. So I always had that resentment. I wasn't able to accept it until recently, like within the last 9 years. So I never accepted it.
So you could never let it go
No.
until then.
Yeah. No.
What led up to feeling like you've really accepted it so that you could forgive it?
It started from the cancer diagnosis that got my attention that it's time for healing. I started therapy. I started looking for information on adult children of incest. And I couldn't find anything because most people are either given away for adoption or given away to other family members. And people don't talk about it. So I found A Time to Tell, the Donna Jensen's group, and hers is Incest Survivors. So I reached out there and she lovingly took me into their group, and I started writing with her group. They have writing circles. And I did that for 3 years, writing every day. That was part of my healing too. So there were so many different formats that I was using, to heal. And I was just willing, I was like, God, please just help me. I'm willing to do this. I'm tired of this burden of carrying all this. I'm willing. And it's like things would just come into me of how to do it. And yeah.
When you think about your mother, what are your feelings for her?
I love her very much. She had her childhood robbed of her. Looking at it from her shoes, I can actually feel for her now that I never was able to do before. We communicate regularly, and we're on a healing journey.
Is your father still alive?
No, he made his transition in 1983.
May I ask what that was like for you?
Oh, I was 20 years old, and I did not want to feel it. I buried it. I remember at his funeral, I walked by the coffin and didn't look at him because I didn't know what would come up, and I didn't want to deal with it. It was too much. It was just too much, and I just couldn't handle it. So again, I pushed away those feelings.
When you think about him now, if you think about him now, what do you feel?
I feel sorry for him to have done what he did. There was a lot of pain and hurt somewhere that caused that. And I'm sorry, I just, yeah.
Now that you are a parent, does that give you any different perspective on what your mom went through, what you went through, anything at all?
When my children were young, because of what I went through, my main priority was to make sure that they knew that they were wanted in this life. That was my main priority. I wanted my children to know that they were wanted. Because that was a big thing for me, because I wasn't. As a child, you sense that, especially when I was very young, you sense it. But I wanted my children to know that they were wanted. That was huge for me. And I feel that I accomplished that. They told me that. They told me I accomplished that. So I'm happy with that. The other thing is I just want any chains of trauma to be broken and not traveled into the future.
You told them about your origins.
Yes.
How did you tell your kids about your own origins?
I told them when I felt they were old enough. I don't remember how old, maybe 15, teenager, probably around 15. I think
you found out.
When I found out, yeah. I think around 15, I told both of them when they were around 15. That was the other thing that was extremely important. I felt like no more family secrets. This is not going to be passed down. They need to know the truth. And I did tell them both. Absolutely. They needed to know. And interesting enough, they were like, oh, okay. I mean, they were like, oh, they was, kind of surprised, but it wasn't a big deal, I guess, because I was just being truthful and honest about it. But I wanted, okay, well, I'm glad you told us, I'm glad you told me, or, I did it separately because they're 7 years apart. So, but I did tell them both.
So how are you doing today, Jerri?
I mean, I'm doing well. Right now, I am doing what I love. So I'm doing my writing and doing what I want, what's important to me. So yes, so I'm really focused on that. I'm focused on self-care, and I do affirmations every day. And one of the affirmations that I started doing recently was that it is safe to be happy. And when I first heard it, do you know it made me cry? Because there was some belief that it wasn't safe to be happy, because every time the things that I wanted to do, or it wasn't allowed. And that was part of my growing up. So I'm working on enjoying and satisfying my inner child, making my inner child happy, and living a fulfilling life. Yeah.
I'd like to hear about what it was like when you heard from our producer, Jessica Severin DeMartinez, inviting you to talk with me. What in the world was it like when you got that email from her? How did you feel about that invitation?
Oh, actually, I was like, oh my gosh, it's time. God was saying, it's time, Jerri. This is it. It's time. And I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready.
If you could go back in time to when you were 15 and whisper something into Jerri's ears, what would that be?
I love you. I'm here with you the whole way. And you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
One last question. What is the best thing in your life right now? What brings you the most joy?
Learning who I am and being willing to live it, and the future, and what that will look like for me. I'm excited about that because it's already started. And just by being here is part of it.
Well, Jerri Harrell, thank you so much for talking with me.
You are so welcome, Kaya.
We have links to the resources you heard on this show and others like incestaware.org and Survivors of Incest Anonymous. You can find them all at ctpublic.org/audacious. This show is always lovingly produced by Jessica Severin DeMartinez, Meg Fitzgerald, Robin Doyon Aitken, and Meg Dalton at Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford. You can stay in touch with me on social media at Kyone Wolf, and please send me an email to audacious@ctpublic.org. Thanks for listening.